The state of Oklahoma is now a little over 3 days away from executing Julius Jones, a man who many believe is innocent. Jones has spent the last 20 years living on Oklahoma's death row, convicted for the 1999 murder of Paul Howell, a crime he's always maintained he didn't do. As of now, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt has yet to step in, despite a recommendation for both commutation and clemency by the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board, plus nationwide support from community leaders, activists, and lawmakers, including Republicans. With an execution date set for this Thursday, the governor's window to act is closing fast. Joining me to discuss is Tiffany D, Loftin, Senior Advisor for the Grassroots Law Project and organizer for the Justice for Julius movement. Tiffany, glad to have you on.
Thank you for having me, sis.
All right, so time is running out for Julius. Please tell us what efforts are being made to try and save his life.
There are a few things. One, we are now coming up on 2 days before his execution. Julius has a scheduled execution for this Thursday. Sis, they're going to start preparing him for execution at 3 a.m. on that day. There were things that they're going to do that day to prepare him for them to take his life. Things like, what is his last meal going to be? He's going to be able to say goodbye to his family. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., he's going to be able to talk to a spiritual advisor and give him a hug for the very first time in 22 years. For the last 2 decades that he's been meeting with folks, he's had to meet with them behind a glass window and touch their hand through the glass. Now this week, the warden of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary is allowing him to meet and touch and hug people in person to say his goodbyes. Julius is not having a good week in this moment. And
Wow.
So the urgency that we need the governor to respond quickly, all he has to do is accept the recommendation that his Pardon and Parole Board made. People, 5 members that he selected to sit on this Pardon and Parole Board, all he has to do is accept their recommendation. Their recommendation was life in prison with the possibility of parole. We have been demanding time served for a crime that he didn't commit and also wasn't even at when it happened 22 years ago, and that he be allowed to go home to enjoy the holidays with his family this year. What we need folks to do right now is 2 things. 1, you can make a phone call to the governor. And 2, you can email the governor. We know that the governor's office has been complaining about all the phone calls they've been getting from Oklahomans, but especially from people outside of the state who care deeply about this case. The phone number is right there on the website, on the screen. Folks can call 405-521-2342. And we're asking folks to be very clear. Governor Kevin Stitt, I'm calling because I am concerned highly about the case of Julius Jones. Your Pardon and Parole Board has now made a recommendation twice, both in September and latest October, recommending that you give Julius a stay, you do not execute him, and that you grant him the possibility of parole. We're doing this because for severe reasons, Julius has maintained his innocence since he's been incarcerated, number 1. And number 2, that there are multiple parties of people, Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, faith leaders, community justice organizations, influencers on social media who have dived into this case. There are friends, close friends of Julius, who have showed us that he has a strong alibi. He was at home when the case happened, when unfortunately Paul Howell was murdered back then. And we are demanding that they pay attention to all of the holes in the case and not execute somebody just because a family wants closure, not execute somebody just because they're a Black man, and not execute somebody just because of the politics of the death penalty in Oklahoma. We need folks to make that phone call right now and to send an email to the governor.
Thank you for walking through some of those facts of the case. Some people are just unaware of how the evidence was just laid out at trial, and how, at the very least, we know that there's extreme doubt, especially to be ending someone's life. Tiffany, earlier today, Julius's mother was at a vigil held outside of the governor's office, and this weekend, hundreds showed up in support at the rally. Republicans and Democrats have come out and said he should be free, not to mention the parole board has twice voted for clemency in his case. With all of this in mind, Why has the governor not stepped in already? I mean, like I said, clearly there's serious doubt here. So what is he waiting for? Why is it always down to the last second? Why?
That's a great question, and I wish I knew how white folks think, because it does not make sense to me why, after 22 years of constant appeals, 22 years of a clear alibi, 22 years ago when there was a mistrial, and the lawyer that Julius Jones had back then is on record in the Viola Davis documentary and in the Vice News clipping. It's 9 minutes. I'll post it on my Instagram. The original lawyer, defense attorney for Julius Jones, said this was his first time ever doing a capital death case like this. He did not know what he was doing. He wished he had more time. He never called the family to the stand. He never called Julius to the stand. Mm-hmm. The first time we heard Julius's voice and heard his side of the story was what's today? November something. October 3rd, I believe, or October. It was a couple weeks ago, where Julius's last hearing took place at the clemency hearing for the Pardon and Parole Board. Now, this was not a hearing where we had all of the evidence put on the case, all of the witnesses came to testify. This was just a small hearing where Julius only had 20 minutes to share what happened 22 years ago for the very first time. I don't know what that must have felt like, to have 20 minutes to fight for your life for something that you did not do and that you've been serving time for. And not only that, but that the person who was the shooter we have witnesses and we have signed testimonies that the person who shot and killed Paul Howell admitted that they were the ones that did it and that they regret putting Julius in the situation that he's in right now. And so there is so much doubt that, to your question, why has the governor waited this long? There are, from my standpoint and from organizing, I've been in Oklahoma now about 5 times. I'm going again later this week. From the folks on the ground, there are a couple of political things at play. One, the Attorney General, John O'Connor, who serves in Oklahoma right now, he has been public in the media, in interviews, very public, about how he is supporting the Howell family. Now, again, for folks who don't know much about the case, the Howell family, Paul Howell was murdered 22 years ago, and so Julius is being held for crime for killing Paul Howell, to which he has admitted he has not done, and he wasn't even at when it happened. This family wants closure. The family members who were in the car, Paul Howell's sister and his daughter's in the back seat, only one of them was actually an eyewitness to who shot them. But the family, these white women, have been going around. This is Black News Channel, so I can be honest. These white women have been going around the news and were at the hearing crying, saying that they saw Julius. Now, this is 22 years ago. And so the Attorney General, John O'Connor, has said that the family needs closure and that there's overwhelming evidence that Julius Jones was the person who did it and they want to kill him. And the Attorney General has then said that the governor will listen to him and that he is pushing him in this direction. Today, Madeline Jones, last thing, tried to meet with the governor today at his office. The governor has met with the Howell family. He is waiting now to make a decision. Madeline Jones, Julius Jones's mother, tried to meet with him and they rejected her invitation to meet. We're hoping he makes the decision as soon as possible and does not wait, because he has up to 30 minutes before the execution to kill him. We're hoping he makes the decision and grants Julius freedom so he can be home with his family the holidays.
Well, Tiffany, I'm running out of time, but I want to thank you for all of the efforts you and the Grassroots Law Project have been doing on the ground there in Oklahoma City. Thank you so very much for joining me tonight.